We all have a friend's sister's boyfriend's cousin who has experienced some urban legend, right? Someone you know perhaps did see Hookman or really did see Bloody Mary in the mirror. But some of these urban legends seem deeper and darker than others, and one of those legends is that of Cropsey. Beginning in the 1970s, Cropsey has terrified family generations living in the northeast part of the United States. The exact origins of this urban legend are debated, but the tale describes Cropsey as a deranged man who lived in the abandoned ruins of a mental asylum. According to the legend, he would emerge at night to abduct children, dragging them back to the dark tunnels beneath the building. These stories would later become a disturbing reality for many children and young adults who fell victim to the real-life sex offender and killer who made Staten Island his killing field. The killer was discovered to be an employee at the Willowbrook State School, an institution for children with development disabilities. Andre Rand, a janitor at the school, was homeless and living in a homemade tent on the grounds of the institution. Holly Ann Hughes, who was age 7 at the time, was last seen July 15, 1981, on Staten Island near Richmond Terrace and Park Avenue. Her mother sent her to a neighborhood store 2 blocks away to purchase a bar of Ivory soap, and she was last seen buying it around 9:30 p.m. She never returned home and has never been heard from again. A month after Hughes' disappearance, her mother, Holly Cedarholm, received a phone call from a man who identified himself as Sal, who informed Cedarholm that he was imprisoning the child and asked that they meet so that Cedarholm could engage in sex acts on camera in exchange for her daughter's return. Cedarholm went with detectives to meet Sal, but he never showed up. In January of 2002, authorities examined the yard of Rand's former Staten Island home on Vreeland Street, but they were unable to find any evidence pertaining to Hughes' case. Shortly after Hughes vanished, police questioned Rand and searched his car, but they did not prosecute him until 20 years later. Cedarholm identified Rand's voice as the same voice she heard during the extortion phone call. Witnesses claimed to have seen Rand's green Volkswagen circle the business where Hughes vanished in 1981. Witnesses saw Hughes in Rand's car. He acknowledged playing hide and seek with Hughes on the day she vanished and gave her money to buy soap because she was, quote, filthy, but he claims to have left her before she vanished. Authorities also determined that Rand's aunt lived in the same Port Richmond apartment building where Hughes' family resided in 1981. Rand was convicted of kidnapping Hughes in October of 2004, but was never charged with the child's murder due to a lack of evidence. In another instance, it was later discovered that he kidnapped and killed a young girl with Down syndrome who resided at the institution where he worked. He was also suspected to have murdered several other disabled children and young adults in the area, though their bodies were never found. To this day, strange voices, threatening symbols, and even sightings can be seen by people who live in the area. Perhaps there's a Cropsey copycat in 2024.
Pulled up in his little green car, asked us if we wanted candy. She went to go get it. She put her arm in the car as he opened up the door, and that's the last I've ever seen of her.
In a surprising turn of events, Tanya Goodson was called to the stand. A playmate of Holly Ann's who was 6 at the time, Tanya testified that she saw Rand wearing a mask and holding candy pull Holly Ann into his car.
So when you said when he took Holly Ann he was wearing a mask, tell me about that.
The mask, I don't remember. All I know is his face was covered. I couldn't see his face.
So it might not have been a mask, just like maybe his hat pulled down or...
No, his whole face was covered.
But when he said, do you want candy, did he look that bizarre with the mask and stuff?
He looked scary.
The Bunny Man urban legend is yet another tale that has haunted many people in Virginia for decades. The tale goes on to say that an escaped prisoner made a gigantic part of the woods his hideout. During this time, the man was rumored to hunt bunnies for consumption and later began an obsession with gutting and hanging them from a bridge underpass. In perfect serial sequence, the man would then start doing the same to kids and young adults who he found wandering out at night, leaving their bodies for the town to see hanging from a bridge. The urban legend is speculated to derive from a very real scenario that happened in that same time period. In October of 1970, a couple decided to park for an intimate moment after watching their favorite local football team. Their time together was interrupted by a man who was dressed in a white suit and wearing bunny ears who began yelling at them that they were on private property. To punctuate his point, he threw a hatchet at their windscreen, apparently shattering it, but came inches from decapitating the female passenger. The couple managed to escape with their lives and would later give their sighting to the police. Police sightings of the so-called Bunny Man began to emerge. In another case, a security guard spotted a hatchet-wielding man chipping away at a porch railing. Police tried, unsuccessfully, to locate the man. While he didn't disembowel anyone, the thought of an adult wielding both a hatchet and a pair of rabbit ears somehow manages to be just as disturbing. In this next case, I think all of you will be just as horrified as me when you find out the creepy and disgusting reality of this next urban legend. Washington is home to some of the highest trees in all of North America, and with that comes the idea that fairies live amongst these trees in beautiful tree houses high enough to not be seen by human eyes. This made for a good cover-up story for what you're about to hear next. In November of 2016, a park ranger became obsessed with the idea of finding one of these tree houses and to actually discover what's inside and publicize it to the entire world. The ranger did eventually find a treehouse and began his documentation of what was inside. However, what he found inside is something the ranger will never forget. Inside the treehouse, child pornography covered all the walls. Pictures upon pictures of little girls who looked to be underage would now make this a crime scene instead of an expedition. The ranger would alert the King County Sheriff's Office, and with that, the FBI also got involved. The photos would end up being seized by authorities, and it was reported that more images would later replace those that were taken off the walls. Eventually, DNA evidence led investigators to Daniel Wood, who at the time of his arrest was 56 years old. Police conducted a search warrant at his home and seized digital evidence such as an SD card which contained thousands of images of child pornography, as well as several videos, according to police reports. He was charged with multiple counts of possession of depictions of minors engaged in sexually explicit acts. Black Volga was an urban legend told in many countries in Europe, but primarily in Poland and Germany for reasons that are still debated. It was widely rumored that a black limousine would drive around at night abducting people, mostly young children, and selling their organs on the black market. Who was driving that limousine, you might ask? It was said to be Satan in human form, as the number 666 was also depicted on the license plate. In other versions of the story, the driver of the black limousine is said to roll down their window and ask a passing pedestrian,
"Would you happen to know what time it is?"
in which the pedestrian would reply the time, and by the next day, they would mysteriously die at the exact same time. During this time in the 60s and 70s, many of these European countries were going through political and economic hardships. Focusing on corruption, it was widely believed amongst Polish citizens that the Polish police force started the rumors and actually used black cars to kidnap people. The objective was to make anyone who reported these abductions sound crazy and completely unbelievable. The Catman urban legend originated in Scotland for the sole purpose of scaring misbehaved children who snuck out at night. According to the legend, the Catman was said to be a mysterious figure who crawled on his stomach and hid in bushes, cars, and buses, identifiable by his supposedly glowing eyes that stare back from the darkness. He is described as stinky, filthy, and covered in grime, and was also rumored to eat sewer rats with his bare hands. When multiple sightings of mutilated rats were reported, people began to wonder if the urban legend of the Catman could actually exist. A cell phone video would later be taken of the supposed Catman, and to an extent, there was truth to the urban legend, but unfortunately, it seemed to be a person with a severe mental illness who ate rats and other small animals in order to survive being homeless. Here is the cell phone video that was captured.
Det er fedt, ja. Det er fedt. Det er virkelig fedt, ja. Come on, I seen, he's cool. He's a good man. Come on, you're not cold.
Not cold, no. Catman, how did you end up with us?
I understand this.
So have you got your work?